speaker then tonight, someone that many of you know and perhaps know very well. Dr. Robert Smith, Bob Smith, is Distinguished Professor and Emeritus Professor of Geophysics, University of Utah. I'm only going to hit some highlights because if I read all of the things that we could say about Bob, he wouldn't get to talk tonight. So his PhD is from the University of Utah in 1967, and he also did postdoc work at Columbia University. 50 years as a University of Utah geophysics professor, and he has supervised 70 graduate students. That is a real accomplishment. He has published literally hundreds of scientific papers and abstracts, and over 300 on Yellowstone Teton geology alone. He's served on numerous U.S. and foreign academic, university, and government advisory bodies. There's a long list of very impressive awards and honors that Bob has received. Just a couple of highlights: 1965, the United States Antarctic Medal; 2011, the John Wesley Powell Award from the U.S. Department of Interiors, and USGS Highest Citizens Prize. 2015, received the Paul D. Silver Award from the American Geophysical Union. His Yellowstone research career, of course the topic of tonight, began in 1956, even before he began his collegiate career. So he now has, as he notes, 61 years worth of time conducting Yellowstone fieldwork and research. He is a coordinating scientist, Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, and Yellowstone Teton Seismic and GPS Network Principal Investigator. There is no one, I think, who is more intimately familiar with the geology of Yellowstone and our valley here, Jackson Hole. And in summary, be advised that Bob's final statement in the materials he gave me is that he calls Yellowstone a living, breathing, shaking, baking caldera. And he also calls the Teton Fault his considerate neighbor. So without further ado, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Dr. Bob Smith.
First of all, can you all hear me? How's that?
Yeah.
Like I've always said, take good notes because there'll be a test at the end. And so I'm going to talk to you today about a lot of brand new things that we've done at Old Faithful and bring you up to date on the ideas of Yellowstone's flooding system. And the idea is that we're going to talk about an overview, have an overview first, and then talk a little about the earthquakes and magma reservoirs that we've been working on. Talk about GPS data on the caldera. We're going to focus primarily on our brand new study of the Upper Geyser Basin and Old Faithful, and how I'll show you the first images that people will have seen of this marvelous system. I said this presentation is a result of a career-long research. I started there in 1956 as a GS0. And studying the Edgar Lake Fault, other systems in Yellowstone for a long time. Now I want to point out that this material you're going to see comes from the collaboration work of many students, as you heard, 70 graduate student theses now, and a lot of friends and colleagues. And this is my research group right here at the University of Utah, and I've been the director, and we're part of the University of Utah Seismic Network, which operates the Yellowstone Network. We record the Teton Network. Park Service, NSF, this scopes a new program in NSF that I founded, YBO, coordinating scientist, and I've been with Teton Science School since 1974. Original board, and the Brinson Foundation, who support a lot of our work. So here's my academic combination. You have to have your combination for your lock, right? Mine's 50, 60, 70. 50, I've been a professor at the University of Utah 50 years. And 60, I've actually worked in Yellowstone 61 years this year.
Wow.
And I've supervised, as John said, 70 graduate student theses. So I've had a long academic career, much of it focused on the old processes of the Yellowstone system. I've shown this slide before, but I want you to get the idea that when we do our work, we work in various topics. I'm concerned about the mantle plume, the heat that comes out of the plume, hydrothermal volcanic features, earthquakes, ground deformation. They all come together, these are all double arrows, to fuel the Yellowstone volcano field. So the Yellowstone plume starts down here at about 1,000 kilometers. It's not turning out to be too. Can you sharpen that up?
No.
Well, and I'm going to show you the results of our imaging. This is down to 1,000 kilometers. This is down to 60 kilometers. And we'll talk about what's happening on the surface today from interferometric radar observations and GPS. The point is that when I work on things, I tend to integrate. I tend not to just focus on one topic, as you can see here. But I like to see how things work together, because you can't study any one of these things solely at Yellowstone and fully understand the total process. Well, Yellowstone's a geologic park, and that's a really important observation. And of course, the epitome of Yellowstone, here shown in the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, are the youthful volcanic rocks. This is a rhyolite flow that has been incised into the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. But I wasn't here at the first. There was a gentleman here in 1870, and he said, "As a country for sightseers is without parallels, a field for scientific research, it promises great results and branches off geology, mineralogy, botany, zoology, and ornithology." And I'll add in geophysics. It's the greatest laboratory that nature furnishes on the surface of the globe. And I think that's true. Now, much of the material that I'm going to show you, or not much, some of the basic material comes from my book, Windows into the Earth, and I've signed the contract for the second edition. And I'll have a lot of the new material in the new edition. Well, I like to show this because prior to 2004, Yellowstone was Yellowstone, but it was the BBC production of the supervolcano that really brought the global audience to understand this is an active volcano and an active system. And so this picture, of course, is a little hype of what they depicted in that movie, but they actually did a correct job. They just made it sound like it was going to happen imminently. Now, I like to understand historic documents. And over my years, I've collected a lot of early work. The early work by Hayden in 1870. I have all these original documents. Actually, I'm in my library, and I'm now donating them to the University of Utah library because these are precious. 1878 Hayden, 1883 Hayden, 1884 the Calumet of the Couteau, which you probably haven't heard of. It's a marvelous book, color paintings. Another Haig, Arnold Haig. Arnold Haig produced this atlas of geologic maps in 1899. These are some lectures called the Stoddard Lectures that were done in 1898 by a gentleman in Pasadena at Caltech. Actually, he was a lecturer. So these are some of the early focus on Yellowstone, and in all cases they mention the idea that Yellowstone's origin is related to volcanic systems and to heat. So these were recognized early on. And the first guy who really saw this was Jim Bridger. And he noticed Yellowstone's hot ground, as you saw, it says right here. The river raced downhill so fast the river turned warm at the bottom. That's the power of the river. And that was his interpretation. 1871, Hayden came out actually, Ferdinand Hayden came out 4 different times. And he recognized much of the geology of Yellowstone. He had a PhD. In those days, you get a PhD in medicine, but you then carried it over into the field of paleontology and geology. And Ferdinand Hayden had come out several years. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's probable during the Pliocene period, the entire country destined by the sources of Yellowstone and Columbia was a scene of great volcanic activity, as he points, as that of any portion of the globe. So he recognized the importance of the Yellowstone system in terms of its origin its volcanic background, and its thermal system. Well, gentleman Colonel Norris came out in 1880. He was actually one of the superintendents of the park, which was formed in 1872. And he witnessed, he witnessed the eruption of Excelsior Geyser. That was the last major eruption in 1888 that blew that giant hole at Excelsior Geyser that I'm sure many of you folks have visited on the Firehole River, next to Grand Prismatic Spring. And as you can see right here, the pool was considerably large. Yes, it's about 200 feet across. Its immediate border swept entirely clear of all movable rock, which means it exploded. And enough to hurl back and forth a ridge around the edge from knee to breast high, distance of 20 to 50 feet. So this gentleman was also an early observationalist and one of the early federal superintendents of the Yellowstone National Park. Now I want to show you this one because this is some of the early work that was done on Yellowstone. And I'm sorry, it's not that clear. This is the center of geysers. These are 1880, 1890 maps. Here's the map of the Firehole River coming down into Old Faithful. And here's a artist's view of the Upper Geyser Basin at Old Faithful and the eruption of Old Faithful. And they called the Upper Geyser Basin Pittsburgh City. Because in those days, 1800, Pittsburgh was, of course, an industrial city with lots of smoke, condensate. But nonetheless, this observation led to 1872, the designation of Yellowstone as the first national park in the entire United States national park system. Well, if we go back to this concept, we're sitting over here in the Jackson Hole area, and I plotted here for the western U.S. areas or centers of volcanic activity. There are millions of years. Now each area contains several super eruptions, not just one or two. So it's 16 million years there were a series of the first Yellowstone hotspot eruptions. 16 million, 14, 12, 11, 10, 6, 7, 4, 2 million, 1 million, and the youngest Yellowstone Caldera is 0.6. Of course, it's plotted on tomography. I also put on the distribution of earthquakes around this system itself. And what we're really seeing is the North American plate is moving across the hotspot candle at a depth of about 60 kilometers. And if you wish to think about this, is the bow wave of a boat going through a lake, correct? This is the bow wave of the North American plate above the Yellowstone hotspot. It's moving to the west, southwest, 2 centimeters per year. So this progression is not because volcanism progressed, it's because the plate moved. Well, here's a map showing the outline of Yellowstone. The first caldera erupted here 2.06 million years ago. The second one at Island Park, 1.3 million years ago. And finally, the Yellowstone Caldera was formed in a giant eruption 640,000 years ago. Now, when we try and calculate how often this thing goes off, we look at the inter-event time, the time between this catastrophic explosion and this one. 800,000 years. I can't quite see that one.
660.
800,000 years. Well, anyway, time since the last event was 640,000 years ago, but the average inter-event time, taking these two, is 700,000 years. So that means it's still 70,000 years away from that. But the statistics of only two numbers, namely that number and that number, inter-eruption times, are highly misleading. Would you buy stock on the basis of 2 days of stock reports? All taking basic statistics. We do not know from this information how close we are to the next super eruption, period. On the other hand, we're monitoring it, and I won't go into the details so that we can actually see premonitory information. just to show you the geographic distribution. That first eruption 2 million years ago was called Huckleberry Ridge Tuff. Huckleberry is a mountain right here, right near Flag Ridge, where it was named. But you can see the distribution of that 2 million year old tuff, not just Yellowstone, but into the Snake River Plain, back down to Jackson Hole in the north of Madison Valley. Widespread. The Henry's Fork system is this smaller one right here, 1.3 million years ago. And finally, the Yellowstone Caldera system, which is made or composed of the lava tree tuff, 640,000 years ago. It's dominantly constrained to Yellowstone itself, and this last eruption dominated the tomography. Since then, there's been 70 post-caldera eruptions that filled in Yellowstone, so that when you go to Yellowstone yourself, you know, it's a flat, high mountainous plateau. And the reason is these giant eruptions destroy the topography and the post-caldera volcanic flows. Then, like toothpaste on the top that smoothed it all like a cake. So this is what it looks like. Here's Yellowstone. This is the Yellowstone Caldera, 640,000 years. There's the Teton Range, there's the Gallatin Range, the Madison Range, or the Absaricas. And when I take visitors to Yellowstone, we drive north, we live in Moose, I take them up, and we get up into the Yellowstone country. First of all, you have to drive uphill. You have to drive uphill about 1,200 feet. And when you get up there, there's no mountains. I bring people to West Thumb and they say, what happened to the Teton Range? Well, it got destroyed because the Teton Range originally continued up at least this far into Yellowstone. Mount Sheridan, the Red Mountains, continued at least this far into Yellowstone. So we have this very high mountainous plateau centered on Yellowstone, but it's not simply Yellowstone itself. The Yellowstone Plateau is about 300 miles wide, and it's because of uplift in the Earth's lithosphere from a giant plume that raises the cool lithosphere itself. Well, if you come down the Firehole Drive from Old Faithful, you will see this is the Firehole Drive. There's the road right there. And there's the Madison Canyon, if you wish. Well, the first caldera formed here. This is Mount Holmes. Mount Holmes is right here. So this was the edge of the caldera number 1. That essentially destroyed all of the topography. Island Park was number 2, and number 3 was this 640,000-year-old caldera. And it dropped this plateau, formed by this eruption, another about 900 meters. So when you drive from West Yellowstone to North Geyser Basin or in Old Faithful, when you come along the Madison Canyon, you're on the edge of the caldera boundary fault. Not active, but it was related to this system. And if you like to drive up the Firehole River, you go up the Firehole River, and this is an exposure right where people go fishing and swimming, but it's a picture of the rhyolite that has been flowed out. It looks like pancake dough. There are different layers and different layering that came out of this volcanic system. There's rock, there's boulders in here that are angular that were caught up from older eruptions, because this giant eruption, you know, we think lasted for, it could have been months to even years. But that's a great place to look. So next time you're fishing or swimming in the Upper Firehole, look behind you where you park, because this is right at the parking lot.
Interesting.
Well, you always got to go uphill, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now, Yellowstone has, of course, great distributions of hydrothermal features. That's geysers, hot springs, and fumaroles. Those are shown in red. And the distribution of it is dominantly within the caldera, with the zone going north from Norris up through the Mammoth corridor. This is Old Faithful right here, and this is the upper, which is the Lower Geyser Basin. But the biggest geyser basin in the world, frankly, is up here, called Hot Springs Basin. You can't drive to it, 25 miles, and I'll show you some pictures a little bit later. But our idea of what these systems are, I'll show you the source of heat as we go along, but heat comes up with conductive processes. It heats an overlying layer of 1 or 2 kilometers of highly saline fluid, and the saline fluid in turn heats an overlying layer of fresh water called meteoric water. And so the geysers and hot springs we see are from this young and this very shallow system right here. Well, you all know these. I don't have to explain geysers to you. Of course, the iconic Old Faithful. And this Old Faithful picture was taken when it was 40 below zero. That's a great time to take it. So this picture of like 1970 something. Here's Guardian, Hot Steam, Beehive Geyser. These are the iconic geysers that make Yellowstone famous. Now I'm going to take you to that Hot Springs Basin group, which is 25 miles north of Fishing Bridge. And it is here's an aerial. And you can see this hydrothermally altered ground from the aerial shot. This whole system is 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers. When you get down to the ground, you look back into here, and you see this. These are fumaroles. Sulfur is being deposited with hot gases coming out. Sulfur is being deposited, native sulfur, right before your eyes. And if you try walking across here, you can get yourself in big trouble. In the history I know of, 2 USGS geologists walked out here without paying attention and followed through the thin crust of this material and got themselves scalded and had to be flown out. Well, if you go clear around this corner, you come to this little geyser system. It's really a hot spring system that continuously roars like a train. It just roars into here. When I first heard it, I was here in '56. I thought there was some kind of a machine going off down here. It's just this system right here that's continuously spouting. So that's the picture you get at Hot Springs Basin. It's a marvelous place, and I'll show you. It's right above the shallow portion of the magma reservoir. Well, I've had some personal experiences, and I've shown these before, but I think it's worth showing people once more. I was in Yellowstone leading a field trip 2009 at, this is Doublet Pool, just south of Old Faithful. And you can see these rocks laying around here. Well, they didn't get deposited by streams. They got blown out, something, namely out of Doublet Pool. So I was lecturing here, and I said, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and hydrothermal eruptions are very rare. Behind my back. Fortunately, I had 30 people on the field trip. They all had cameras taking pictures, so I got a lot of pictures of this eruption of May 17, Opal Pool. And you can see the extent of these large boulders and rocks that were thrown out of this system. They were waterway.
How far were you?
About 30 feet. The wind had been blowing, and the wind turned out was blowing from left to right. If it was blowing right to left, we had a different story. I heard this thing go off. Now remember, my back's toward it, and all these people were watching it. I turned around, saw it exploding, and I thought, maybe it's a truck coming down. The trees shouldn't be in Yellowstone. So I instantaneously considered, should I run, save myself? Should I get my camera out of my pack, where it's always buried, or save my companions? Well, fortunately, it only lasted a few seconds, and the wind was blowing the opposite direction, so we were safe. But these are unusual experiences. Here's the other one. I was flying over the west side of Yellowstone with National Geographic photographer in 1984. He shot 30 rolls. This is pre-digital days. And I had 4 pictures left in my little Olympus. Probably only had 6 pounds of fuel left in the Cessna 182. Wow. And we were going to West Yellowstone to refuel. I looked up to the northeast, and I saw this big plume, and I thought it was a forest fire. Well, I finally went straight to Norris. I shot 1, 2, 3, and this is my last image of my camera. Wow. It's an aerial image, and the only one that I know of of Steamboat Geyser, the biggest geyser in the world. And you can see these are high velocity water jets that are coming out from the first about 500 feet, and then there's hot water and then a mist. So it gets up around 1,500 feet. We came back later that day, these trees right in here, it blew out trees and rocks the size of Volkswagen cars. Well, this is an important thing. Now, it erupted at the time I got this picture, about every 5 to 10 years. It only lasts for 20 to 30 minutes, right? And you can't see it at night. You probably won't see it in the winter. So the question is, what's the chances of me taking that picture? The chances are 1 in 150 million.
Wow.
And that is like the Powerball lottery.
He's been up there 150 million times, though.
Oh, we've got the library is preempted. So I got to shut this off. Here. Your library is very secure. Well, Yellowstone derives its volcanism from very hot magmatic systems. And here's a figure showing the heat flow of the western area, Snake River Plain, Idaho, here's Yellowstone Park. And all these dots are places where we've taken measurements of heat flow. Now, heat flow is a measurement of how many degrees centigrade it changes per kilometer. That means you have to drill a hole, and these holes are sometimes 5 meters to 100 meters. And we measure the gradient, then we convert the gradient to actual heat flux. Well, here's Yellowstone itself. The average heat flux, and I just averaged a lot of data, inside the caldera, that's 35 watts, 44 watts, 49 watts, 58 watts. You know, this is enough heat to light your light bulb if you can capture it, convert the heat to electricity. Well, the important feature is it's actually about 60 times the continental average, and it is about equivalent to 600 gigawatts. Now that's the equivalent power of a power plant or a nuclear system, and it's coming from crystallization of a basaltic magma at a depth of only maybe 5 to 10 kilometers. It's only a tenth of a cubic kilometer volume. That's not very big. Not as big as this this block, with a couple hundred meters high. So Yellowstone is being heated by fluids and conductive heat flow. Well, we went out in this country, we did studies like this one. We have a boat, this is the National Park Service boat. We had a thermal probe. We did this in the late 70s and through the 80s, and we made measurements, 356 points. We actually dropped this probe. That probe drives itself into the mud, has thermistors every meter, so we measure the heat flow over this 5-meter piston. And what we discovered was that the heat flow gradient was, well, let's start down here where it's cold. Southeast arm, south arm, these numbers are 120. As you get further north, toward the north end of the lake, the heat flow gradient gets up to 30,000 milliwatts per square meter of actual heat flow. And a little cooler area in West Thumb, which is a little caldera on its own. Well, here's a 3D picture of that same system, and the enormous amount of heat that's coming out of the northern Mary Bay area that we discovered in these early studies. What we actually measured was depth versus temperature. Now, these bulbs go into the mud, and these are actual temperature measurements, 0 to 120 degrees centigrade. So boiling is actually 97 degrees. So we're right at boiling on many of these probes. When you get to the south end of the lake, it's only 4 to 7 degrees centigrade. you know, factor of 10 different. That's down in here. This is an enormous flux of heat. So there's about 60 milliwatts per square meter of that, 60 watts in your light bulb. Stevenson Island's about 10 to 20. This is where the enormous portion of the system is, because inside of the caldera, there's the boundary. Well, we measure the actual heat flow with temperature versus depth. And this is the curve, what we call the boiling point curve. That's when you heat your water for your coffee. As you get pressure on top of it, it gets to a higher and higher temperature. And so this is the boiling point curve. Mary Bay, Stevenson Island, these numbers are going right up to the boiling point. This is heading toward the boiling point. These numbers right here are data we took at Pocket Basin and around Old Faithful. It's right on the boiling point curve. Now, why is that important? Because if you're on this side of the curve, you have a hydrothermal explosion. If you're on this side, it's stable. So we don't want to be over here, or we'll get a giant hydrothermal phreatic water eruption.
Where is Y2 located?
Y2 is a drill hole the USGS did at the Old Faithful, where the overpasses, right in the overpass area of Old Faithful. Well, as I said, I wasn't the first guy here. Mr. Hayden was very observant, and the morning of August 20th at 1 o'clock, we felt quite an earthquake. The first shock lasted 20 seconds, was followed by 5 or 6. Duncan, who was on guard, said the trees were shaking and the horses would lay on the ground, sprung to their feet. So persistent were earthquake tremors at Yellowstone Lake that Hayden named this place Earthquake Camp. Now, this is Mary Bay. Actually, Mary Bay is right here. This is Sedge Bay. And this is the very eastern edge of the caldera. When you go up, the road goes up, around the lake, and then it comes back, and you can drive up to a parking place right here and observe the whole system. I'm going to talk about earthquakes just a bit, just to remind you it's a very active place. These are earthquakes of the Intermountain Seismic Belt, Kalispell, St. George, through the Wasatch. But here's this parabola that I showed you before. And if I detail it, you can see the seismicity in Yellowstone and Teton. And I'm not going to talk about Teton, that's another talk in its own. But in Yellowstone, we find this, if you wish, this zone of seismicity that starts south end of Hedgwood Lake, where the rupture of the 1959 Hedgwood Lake earthquake, 7.3, killed 28 people. This earthquake belt goes right over to Norris, then it breaks up into these north-south trends, which are simply fractures in the earth along which the fluids come, and because they're fractures produce earthquakes. Well, again, as I said, here's the Hedgwood Lake earthquake in 1959. In 1975, we had a magnitude 6 at North Junction. And I plotted here the earthquakes again. And the yellow stars are the post-caldera volcanic vents. So these are all features that are younger than 640,000 years. In fact, here on Pitchstone Plateau, these volcanic flows are as young as 70,000 years. The point is, they subparallel the earthquakes. You guys paid up your... Sorry about that. We have to block it. And we had in 1959 the Hedgwood Lake earthquake. In 1959, we had the rupture of the Hedgwood Lake Fault, west of West Hill, north of west. And it's 22 feet high. That's 3 geology students high. Thereafter, here is the rocks that came down, closed the road of Madison River. But there, Charlie Craighead, a little younger, huh? And here they are, in Madison Canyon, and these roads were closed for a couple of weeks. Well, the point is, 28 people lost their lives in this earthquake of large landslides west of West Yellowstone. and it created $15 million in damage, 59. Nowadays, it's 100 million or more of this type of event. This is called the maximum credible earthquake that we would see, and we could see in the Yellowstone system. Well, if you're trying to drive the Mammoth a little hard, here's the landslide that took out the road at Mammoth. There's the road at William Gibbon Falls. You see the type of damage that was done in these earthquakes. Well, I'm going to tell you stories now and talk about earthquakes and swarms. And swarms make up 50% of the total energy in Yellowstone. Swarms of earthquakes a swarm means that the earthquake system is concentrated in a very small area in a short time frame. So it's called a swarm. Now the problem is swarms can last for seconds, minutes, hours, days, and years. But nonetheless, I'm going to show you this one right here, because this was the first really well-studied swarm. And it's at Yellowstone Lake, late December, early January 2009 and 8. And by the way, I plotted on this map earthquakes that are identifiable swarms in blue compared to the red earthquakes, which means they're earthquakes that are independent and rupture by themselves, whereas these earthquakes, I'll show you what a swarm looks like. This is what a swarm looks like on a seismograph. And I was driving from Salt Lake City to Moose, December 28th, as I recall, and my alarm goes off, and my trigger on my alarm, anything over magnitude 1 triggers the alarm. Suddenly, I was getting triggers and triggers and triggers. And I finally got to my home, and Moose got onto the computer. And here were the earthquakes coming in at a station by Lake, a fishing bridge. There's a magnitude 2.1, and a 3.5, and then a magnitude 4. This is a station in Promontory, in the middle of Yellowstone Lake. These are the earthquakes. Now, that part of the year, in December, there's no tourists, but there's about 50 National Park Service employees that live at Lake, and they were rating it out, because they were feeling everything over magnitude 2. So it was shaking the devil out of them. They had their snowmobiles all gassed up and ready to go. And we talked them through this whole sequence. And the sequence was like this. It started down here to the south and migrated with time to the north. And here's Lake, Fishing Bridge. Here's a cross section from south to north. The magnitude for it, that was down here. Then the earthquakes migrated at 1,000 meters per day from left to right, and they got shallower. And when they get shallower, you're in the vicinity of the crustal magma reservoir. So the question we had to address, is it a precursor for a large magnitude 7 earthquake, or is it a set of earthquakes that are telling something about fluids, that is volcanic fluids, magma, coming out of the magmatic system? Well, what that earthquake sequence did, you can see right here, we modeled it. We have different kinds of methods. We showed that the whole ground was stretching apart over a period of about 5 days. And here's the picture that we actually created with computers using GPS stations that laid white stations around. And these arrows show the thing was pulling apart. So the top of this dike, and a dike means it's a vertical fracture, the top of it spread apart almost 10 centimeters over that week-long period of earthquakes. And it got less and less as you got shallower, and finally at the depth part, it was actually acting like a normal fault, like a Teton fault, but very small. Well, what we did is we modeled it. So this is a really good case of what a swarm does. So this is a cross-section into the vertical swarm. So there's fluids coming in, 5 cubic meters per second. Now the fluids are magma and hydrothermal gas, hot water. And when you intrude this hot rock into this cold surrounding rock, you fracture the rock and create earthquakes. So the stars are earthquakes. The edge, when it gets close to where it's cold, it stiffens up, you create earthquakes. You get more and more fluids get overpressured because you're pushing fluids outward. There are the earthquakes. and the next intrusion step goes on and on. This went on for about a week. So that's our actual mathematical model of today. Now, we like to study earthquakes like you go to the radiologist. You can come to me for a CAT scan. I'm a lot more expensive, but I'm just as good. So here's some CAT scan images of Yellowstone. And we did the original software for what we call seismic tomography in 1963 and 4 with my PhD colleague, John Warnick. I did a PhD in geophysics, data academics. He went for Adobe Systems. We keep asking him first. He's typing for me. Nonetheless, what we use, earthquakes send out seismic waves. They get recorded at seismic stations. This is cold rock, but if you have hot rock, the rocks retard the velocity of the seismic waves. Now, by the way, the seismic waves, I'm talking to you in seismic waves, just waves that propagate through the earth. I'm talking to you, it's 11 kilometers per second. This is 1.1 kilometers per second. In the earth, it's 6 kilometers per second. So what we want to do is illuminate this area using computational methods. And what our first discovery in 2014, we found this low velocity body that extended beneath the caldera right here, from southwest to northeast. And it was a body that we interpreted to be a partial melt, up to 15% magma. Now that was in 2014, and we thought we were doing pretty good. Then we, by the way, this is what this thing looks like. It's to the southwest, extends well beyond the caldera, almost up to the Lamar, look, extends up beneath the Lamar Valley. Wow. I won't go through the details of this, except there's enough magma in that body to fill the Grand Canyon twice. That gives you a good perspective. Wow. So, we did pretty good. We outlined this part of the Earth's crust. Here's Yellowstone, here's that partial melt, that magma system. We don't have a clue what's going in here. And what's happening between the Earth's plume? And I haven't shown you the data. We've imaged the mantle plume that was cleared out 1,000 kilometers. What's happening here? Well, fortunately, about that time, new computational methods came out, 2015 and 16. And we used this distribution of earthquakes, which are all these red dots. And we used 4,000 earthquake data sets. We calculated 47,000 arrivals. Then we used earthquakes from around the world to illuminate the system. We ended up using 400,000 automated pick times. We required new computational algorithms 6 to 10 hours per iteration. We do 30 iterations of the University of Utah High Performance Computer, 5,000 node array. And now it's up to about 6,000, and we still use it. Here's what we discovered beneath Yellowstone, A to B. You can see over here, A to B is on this line. Here was the magma reservoir we discovered the year before. What we discovered was this new one. So the low velocity body, just at depth going about 15 kilometers to about 60. Now I'm going to move on here because I want to get on some more details, except to show you that this low velocity, these are depth slices. Here's that shallowest depth slice at 8 kilometers. Then it goes away, and the new one starts at about 16 kilometers. And by 35, it really develops into a big system. This is the basaltic magma that rises and melts the surrounding rocks to produce rhyolitic magma. So that's the image we created. It was published in Science, and it's now been referenced something like 7,000 times, because it's the image of the full plumbing system of Yellowstone. So from the mantle plume, it's now 1,000 kilometers, fluids, magma, melt, comes up, fills this pocket, melt comes off here, rocks the surrounding, melts the surrounding rocks, fractures, creates that Yellowstone magma quantity that fuels it today. It starts over here at Outer Lake Dome, it's Oak Faithful, goes clear up to the Lamar, up here to the northeast where it's shallows. So Here's a 3D image of this thing. And this plume is right here. That's the mantle plume. It fuels the lower crustal plume. It fuels the upper crustal and shallowest body. And these dots are all the earthquakes that we use to create these images. That is local earthquakes in this system. Okay, you've all been here, right? Lovely place. What do you do, or what are you walking on? Besides the fact you're walking around here with another 10,000 people out there. What is really under Old Faithful? What fuels Old Faithful? To my surprise, it's never been studied. And the reasons are because it's very difficult to get to. That is, you can't walk out to the geyser unless you get permission, and we work after the park closes. So I'm going to show you the story of the Old Faithful geyser system from a brand new study we've been working on now 2 years, 3 years. And what we have are these new seismographs. We have 150 of them now. They're the size of a quart jar. We put them right here. This is the boardwalk right in front of the visitor center. And we do this after the park closes because we can't have tourists walking around, because we put out 150 of these around the apron of Old Faithful. Now, if you were smart watching the webcam, you'd see us. We had criteria, we had to put a disclaimer, we're walking, because we walk all over up to the orifice itself.
Wow.
Well, there we are. Of course, it's winter in November, and the instrument here is buried in the snow. These are called autonomous seismographs because they operate by themselves. Just take them out, stick them in the ground, and walk away. They have a self-recording system. They have a satellite timing system, and they have memory that will allow them to run for 2.5 months. Not cheap. This is Old Faithful apron. There's the geyser. Here's the distribution of these stations we put in. We started in 2015. We did 16. We're going to do 17 this year. So here's Old Faithful. And remember, there's a place up here called Geyser Hill. Remember that location. And I want to show you this picture right here because you can see the Old Faithful Inn is right here. There you're getting up into the parking lot, and the visitor center is, there's the Old Faithful Lodge. Visitor center is right here. These are all the locations of seismographs. We put them out, spaced about 15 feet. They run for several days. And then we move them. So each one of these color patterns is a separate day. So we did this pattern, this pattern, this pattern. These are and we ran an array here, and we ran over 500 locations. Well, let me tell you, they're heavy. We had a lot of good student help at Park Service support. We created for you computer folks 9 terabytes of data. Here's what we discovered. Here's what the seismic signal was. Oops. Sorry. The seismic signal, these are 6 different stations. What we found are these pulsations and then quiet, and then pulsations and quiet pulsations. And we saw it on all the instruments. All 140 that actually worked. Well, that's only 3 hours of data. So the ground is relatively quiet here, and then it bursts into this, what we call tremor. Starts shaking. And what we discovered, and I've blown it up for a few stations, here's this precursory tremor, and the Old Faithful eruptions right there. Can you see it? You can't see it there, you can't see it there, you can't see it there, you can't see it there. The Old Faithful signal is very, very low energy compared to this ground shaking that precedes it by 20 to 30 minutes. We can now, with our algorithms, we can predict an eruption within 1 minute. Park Service is after us, give us the software and everything else. You got to listen to this, or
Bob, if you go back to that, that's one eruption you had noted there. Would we see one or two additional eruptions on that over that time?
Well, I'll show you. These are the harmonic tremors. Old Faithful, this is where it went off. You can't see it. I just put in where Old Faithful should have been seen as a signal.
But over 4.5 hours, we ought to see about 3 of them, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, but you can see.
And are they
it
always right behind those
I'll get to the
precursors?
timing here in just, yeah.
Ah,
I
perfect.
scaled them down, so here's 4.5 hours, and we're seeing the harmonic tremor. Now these are the Old Faithful eruptions in red. It's hardly any signal whatsoever.
Really?
So that was an amazing surprise. It had very little energy compared to this thing that's prior to it. Okay, now, bear with me. You can't hear it, but I've got this in, I've got audio. Here's one of these signals, and I'm going to run through it. And I wish you could hear this. We don't have audio. But we can actually run through and listen to the ground in one of these harmonic tremors up to the time of the Old Faithful will be right here. Can you hear that up here? Yeah. Sorry, we weren't hooked up. What?
Maybe put your mic right.
Oh, okay. Can you hear it? Yeah. That's the ground shaking by itself prior to an Old Faithful eruption.
Do you think that's the fluids moving through the rock?
Yeah, I'll show you. We think it's gases and fluids filling the hydrothermal reservoir prior to the eruption.
Is this in gross audio or?
Say again?
Is this in gross audio or a bandpass?
You know, I can't hear it, sounds so close. But I can't hear you. Now, Old Faithful would be erupting about, it's a movie, so I can pull it up. About there. You'll see it.
Interesting.
Now, if we go up to Geyser Hill, I showed something to you before. We have on Geyser Hill, there's no geyser, there's a place called Doublet Pool. Doublet Pool rises and sinks, has a lot of fluids coming out of it. Here's the water coming, the gases in this corner of the pool right there. And what we actually measure then at Geyser Hill, its pulses are right here. And you can see they're about every 45 minutes. So it's totally separate from Old Faithful. It's not connected to Old Faithful. It has its own reservoir. And now I'm going to show you a cartoon, well, schematic. Here are our stations, and I'm going to run this movie, and you're going to see seismic waves coming in. These are individual stations, and the amplitude of the signal will be red for low, blue for high. Oh, there's all the people down around the southern part of, down in here, where the people are in anthropogenic noise. But I'm looking for this one up here. And it's going to go off up here. You'll see it in just a moment. Now this is, said sound waves, reference velocity is 1,000 feet per second. That's what I'm talking to you. And in this very low velocity rocks, only 300 feet per second. Now, Geyser Hill's starting to light up. Now this is over 3 or 4 hours. Speed it up a little bit. Still see people walking around down here. I think I just passed up the Geyser Hill main signal. There we go. You can see these pulses at Geyser Hill. We don't know what they are. We didn't know what they are. But when they occur, they send their own waves back across Old So we've tried to create some images. So we put a source right here. We actually, what would the source look like if it lit up the whole array at Old Faithful? So Old Faithful were generating noise. You'd see a big blob around Old Faithful, but you're not. You're seeing waves that come off Geyser Hill up here. What we found out is that, here's Old Faithful. We look at seismic stations on this line of stations here. We just show them right here. Right in the middle, right here, the waves are delayed just a few hundredths of a second in the blue or the green, because there was something up here that was retarding them. That was our first definition of a low velocity body. Well, again, these are what they look like. Here's what we discovered an enigma. We found that the Earth shakes all the time. I'm showing you those little tremors. But they correlate mostly with, this is air temperature, over a period of several days. These are all the little tremors going on. And we get this air temperature. When it gets low, you get these pulse, you get these times when there's very little signal. We don't have a clue what that is. I'll be honest, I mean, this is what we're working on right now. What does it mean? And we don't know, but something is coupling between the air temperature and the hydrothermal system itself. So what do these signals really look like? This is a pre-eruption. Again, an Old Faithful eruption would have been over here if we could have seen it. So we took just a section of this, and we blew it up, and we saw it was full of all these little pulses, hundreds of thousands. And when you take those apart, you see individual earthquakes, if you wish, of magnitude -5. These are tiny, tiny earthquakes equivalent. And they make up this precursory signal. So they're just shaking all the time, but it's made up of individual little fractures and tiny earthquakes. So what we did then is we laid out our instruments, we had a hammer. We're not going to put dynamite out there, so we use the hammer size is great. So there's our hammer array. And I told you before, these are the stations that we occupied. And now this is brand new. This is so new, I don't have the right labels up. I just got this last week. Here's a south to north plot of seismic velocity. Don't worry about the velocity. Velocity proxy is a proxy for temperature. When the velocity is low, the temperature is very high. And here's Old Faithful right here. And it's off toward the south. If you do an east-west line, you can see it's very shallow. Now these are very shallow. They're only a few hundred meters deep. So this is brand new for people to see it. So let me show you what we found. We found a zone of very low velocities here and a smaller zone here. And here's what we actually interpreted. We have a body beneath. The edge of Old Faithful extends to the southwest. It's a highly fractured hydrothermal source. There's the boardwalk. There's the Old Faithful Inn. And this body moves from 20 meters to about 80 meters. Now this is about 60 to 70%, well, 50% fracture porosity. So these are hot fluids, phreatic fluids, hot water and steam and gas that are filling the Old Faithful reservoir. And here's Old Faithful right here. Just a little conduit comes to the surface. Very famous, not much energy. So next time you walk up there, here's where it is. So when you're walking around, here's the visitor center. Here's the Old Faithful Inn, and you're always, when you go up there, you walk around. There's the old lodge. Make sure you're where you're walking. There's that body.
Wow.
Now you can't publish any of this, just hot stuff. I can tell you both sides. This is the area that overlies that shallow hydrothermal reservoir.
Wow.
Then you wonder why in the winter, all of these parking lots are free of snow. And we've actually we've done measurements at the bottom of the Old Faithful Inn and the Old Faithful Lodge, where you get down just 2 or 3 feet and you're into essentially obsidian sand and mud that is so hot you can't put your hand into it. Well, when they built these features, they didn't know that. Here's where it is, guys. Now, society signals. Each one of these red lines is a Old Faithful eruption. 1, 2, 3, 4 for several hours. Here's the night. And the black are the seismic signals. Then, about 7 in the morning, people start walking on the boardwalk. And so we record the people. We record the people. We record the people. And what's amazing is after every eruption, people are walking back. And we have a record of where they're going. Guess where it is? Back to the restrooms. That's for real. Society and seismology. Moreover, if you have a seismograph over here laying in the ground and a bison comes along, he knocks out of the, didn't destroy it. Here's these bison hoof prints and the seismogram. This is where he first walked into it. He's walking these are over a few minutes or so. Then he stopped, I guess, and tried to decide what he's going to do with it. Then he walked right up to it, flung it out of the ground. So, all of our models are contained in the National Geographic May 2016 Yellowstone issue. And I'm not going to go through this, but he did quite a good job in depicting the fact you have a hydrothermal magma source that releases fluids into a highly fractured upper portion of the crust. And we think Old Faithful has a reservoir. This is diagrammatic. This is French colleagues. I don't think it looks like that. But the idea is fluids come up into this chamber. We know it's not a chamber. It's highly fractured rock with high porosity. And once it reaches this excess pressure, it blows fluids to the surface. Old Faithful. So you can see that in your National Geographic. Now let me finish this just off. June 12th, suddenly earthquakes started happening in West Yellowstone. And here's a map showing the distribution of earthquakes that's been going on. This is June 12th through the 18th. Here's the town of West Yellowstone, Grayling Creek Junction, and there are the earthquakes right here. And we've now located close to 2,000 of these earthquakes. And this is what the record looks like. The day that the swarm started, it started right up here with a magnitude 4. So this Maple Creek swarm on June 12th was initiated by, it's not a big earthquake, and then the whole area went into shaking. And we've now located, as of this morning, not 1,100 but 1,700 events. And on a separate system, we've recorded 8,000 of these little tremors itself. We can only locate the larger magnitudes. This is what it looked like the day before, and the magnitude 4, and then it went into this high rate of seismic swarm. There's literally thousands and thousands of earthquakes occurring. These are one-day records at a station at Maple Creek, which is right at Grayling Creek Junction. And just for you guys, today, as of about 4 o'clock, here's an earthquake we had yesterday, magnitude 3.3. There weren't many earthquakes going off. And for you guys, I triggered this one. There's the swarm that I triggered for you that's going on right now, magnitude 3.7, 3.6, 2.6. These are being felt by people in West Yellowstone. So my phone's probably, I turned it to silence. They'll be ringing. The mayor of West Yellowstone knows me. So that's for you guys. Just for my talk. And for the earthquakes on, I can turn them off too. Well, there's the press release. We just released this afternoon. So if you want to go to our website, all the details of this earthquake right here are on press releases. That's our job. We issue press releases for earthquakes over magnitude 3 or big swarms that are of public interest. And you can see we detail the location, latitude, longitude, the time of day and universal time as well as local time, and we detail the magnitude as well. Magnitude 3.6. And you can go to our website, quake.utah.edu, and see it all. So there it is, as of 4:30. Now how better can I do for you? Now the Hebgen Lake fault that broke in 1959 comes right here, and it ended right there. So what is this? I'll speculate and say it's an extension of the Hebgen Lake fault that's buried by the younger volcanic rocks. It's not been mapped because you can't see it on the surface, but this is the pre-existing Hebgen Lake fault, I think, that's triggering these events. And of course the question is, are these earthquakes going to extend to the south into a much bigger system, or are they going to into the magma system? I have no idea. I just did this for you before I left. But I'm going to show you a little bit about what happens when bad things happen in Yellowstone, or how often they happen. So this is a little about earthquake hazards, hydrothermal hazard. Hydrothermal eruptions, you know, we get these several per century, but they're small. We get big earthquakes, about one every 800 years. They're big. We get lava flows about every few thousand years. And we get super eruptions, you know, every 600,000 years. The probability of a super eruption, just so you can think about it, listen to the numbers, guys, 0.00014% per year. So you guides, you got to dispel this. Here's the biggest hazard in Yellowstone. It's the earthquakes right here that somebody called the parabol of death, not me. And we're sitting down here in Jackson Hole, and here's the peak ground acceleration, Star Valley, Jackson Hole, southern Yellowstone. These big faults come down the arms of the lakes and Hebgen Lake and Centennial Valley. I was just over in Centennial Valley lecturing at the environmental center there. What a marvelous place that is. Anyway, it's the highest ground acceleration right here. That's brown. That means the peak ground acceleration one would expect on an annual basis is the highest in the entire seismic belt. Alice Belt and St. George. So here's the pie chart. How often and how big. So I calculated the probability. That's the likelihood. The percent chance something's going to happen on an annual basis. Caldera forming eruption. I told you, 0.00014% per year. Pretty small. If you take into account the area, so I multiply that probability to the area that will be affected, well, big super eruption is a large area, so that little slice is a bit bigger. These little post-caldera rhyolite flows, there's been 70 since the last super eruption, but they're small, so the area is relatively small. Hydrothermal eruptions, I told you, we have a lot of those in Yellowstone. But they're very, very small. They cover, in fact, only a few hundred square meters. And the actual risk, because they're so small, is tiny. There's the big player. Yellowstone's hazard and risk is dominantly from magnitude 7 and larger earthquakes. And if you calculate the risk factor, it's 96%. Biggest hazard are deadly earthquakes, not volcanic eruptions, despite what the press tends to emphasize. That's a really important take-home note. Now, we just developed the data for Yellowstone Lake with our lake bottom measurements. A brand new calculation shows we can measure the depth to the boiling point. Now, Yellowstone Lake is underlying, I showed you that home north end, by high temperature material. If you drop the lake level, it'll explode. This is just a pressure cooker you've got in your kitchen. If you have a pressure cooker and you heat it up to boiling, and then release the lid, what happens? It blows out. There's the pressure cooker right there. And this is the depth right here at which boiling would occur. And up in here it's right in the, it's about 10 meters. So this area right in here, if we dropped, even 5 meters, I actually counted it as 6 meters. If we dropped the lake level instantaneously by 6 meters, we'd have another huge hydrothermal eruption beneath the lake, creating a new Mary Bay. So, finishing off here, this is our story then. This complete plumbing system of Yellowstone starts in the mantle plume. Hot magmas arise, fuel the lower crustal partial melt, which goes through fractures and fuels this shallow rhyolite system beneath Mallard Lake, Old Faithful's right here. This is the Caldera boundary. Up to the northeast side, up toward Lamar River, Lamar area right here. Now, earthquakes keep Yellowstone safe, so don't pray that earthquakes stop. The reason is this. I plotted here the number of earthquakes per quartile, and these are these bars. From 1923, we started making measurements of the ground movement, and we made that by geodetic methods, and we used the same methods in 1923. We now use GPS. So here's the story. These are earthquake per quartile. The network was shut down and I rescued it. And then we had a big earthquake swarm in 1986 on the just north of West Yellowstone. And then we had seismicity decreased, and then we started recognizing these big swarms in blue. And you see a big swarm right here in 2010, which is just outside of Old Faithful. Now look, the earthquake peaks in these swarms, and then the caldera goes down. And then it went up and it went down, and then it had this big accelerated uplift. And then as soon as this swarm hit, it went down again. So the caldera is going down here and here. Outside the caldera, Upper Geyser Basin, West Yellowstone, when this side's going down, this side's going up. So they're sympathetic. Now, the point is this. What's actually happening, I think, is that you have a magma reservoir. Listen, it's getting magma from the Earth's plume. The Earth's plume is feeding at the same rate, 0.1 cubic kilometers per year. It doesn't sound like a lot. But it's enough to fill Grand Canyon 3 times, or 7,000 years. The point is this magma system has this body that's confined by the surrounding rocks. So the strength of the Earth is keeping this thing from rupturing, if you wish. Well, every so often we have these earthquake swarms, and I've hypothesized those are actually dikes that extend out from Yellowstone, and the fluids that were in this pressure current go outside. So it keeps things safe. The corollary is if you have protracted confinement and magma recharge with strong confining pressure, it eventually exceeds the reservoir strength and it blows up. That's your pressure cooker on your stove. You know darn well if you get it hotter and hotter and hotter, finally, it'll explode. But if you release the pressure every 10 minutes in your pressure cooker, it won't. So that's my professional opinion. And here's kind of the conclusion. Here's that big plume. I didn't give you the details. Here's Yellowstone. There's a plume of magma that reaches down 600 kilometers beneath Yellowstone itself. The small magma reservoirs are shown here in red. They're teeny. So this westward tilted plume, as I said, goes 600 kilometers. The plume buoyancy means hot rocks, means the low density rocks, that they try to buoy up the Earth's lithosphere. That's why we have a Yellowstone plateau. The temperature of this body is only 170 degrees Kelvin, sorry, Kelvin. But it's not a very hot plume, it's weak. But nonetheless, it lifts the Earth up. So 17 million years ago, we started Yellowstone down in southwestern Idaho, progressed as the plate moved across to Yellowstone today. It's the same magma that produced the high lava plains of Oregon and Columbia Plateau of Washington. It's the same mantle source. So So 12 million years to the present, the plume was deflected. By the way, it's tilted 60 degrees. And I won't go through the physics of it, but I've got slides for it. Because it's like cigarette smoking in the wind. If you blow on the side, the smoke column tilts. Same thing in the Earth. This magma is in the return flow of the Earth's upper mantle that tilts the system. Okay, guys. Can you outrun an eruption? I help these guys. Don't do me wrong. Can you hear The volcanic gases can, speeds of 700 kilometers per hour. 10 miles an hour. So I'm just going to finish off with my career accomplishment. I have protected you guys for your entire life. I can't do any better, right? So this is a key point of my career. Earth scientists watch geologic processes that are millions and billions of years old. Fortunately, I study Yellowstone, which is living and breathing and shaking over my career. I proudly point out it continues to be exhilarating, fun, and exciting. And you can see all of the detail of the plume in the National Geographic issue. These are all from my original images, the Geographic rendering, and they did a marvelous job. I don't need to go through the mantle plume, lower crustal reservoir, upper crustal reservoir, and there's the track, the hot spot. Right. The literal end. That's a big puff of smoke coming from Yellowstone clear across the eastern U.S. and over amplified. Again, visit Yellowstone. Here's where all the data are. You can. All of our data are in real time. Everything that I've shown you in real-time seismic data, you can see as fast as I can. I've made a big point in our group. Everything we do is in real time. So you can go to that website. Oh, here's our research website where people ask, where's all of our science? It's University of Utah Seismology Active Tectonics Research Group. But here's the earthquake data. You remember that, quake.utah.edu. There's where all the real-time data are. But I've made those images for you just before I left my house. And we put all of our data, it's served up by the USGS, but the original data is to look for, it's right here for the real-time data and right here for the science. This is, I've already shown this a bit, but this is neat. You gotta watch, I think I showed it before, but we just discovered. Professor Westphal was a professor at Caltech, and he worked at JPL in Pasadena. And short voyage towards the center of the earth. They lowered a television camera down on the faithful. It's only been done once, and it won't be done again. We just found the footage. It was lost until 2 years ago. And wife, who seems to be passed away, found it in the Geyser Basin. Can you hear that? Close it. So the idea is to use a geyser as a proxy for a volcanic eruption. You can't put instruments down an exploding volcano, but you can put them down on faithful. And it's very, very similar physics.
Why does it stop filling up at about 15 feet below the top? If you look down from the top, the bed is a slot about 4 or 5 feet long.
Now, we put instruments right there last winter, right around this orifice.
Full eruption.
That's what it looks
Here
like.
you see the
You're
old
right up
faithful
to it.
surface band is a slot-like
It's a
structure,
slot,
as
a
I mentioned
fracture
before.
like a
It's
diamond.
covered with a material called center, which looks kind of like snow, but it's actually made out of silica, a very hard material that coats everything that gets splashed with the erupted water. The housing we built for the camera seen in this view. It's a stainless steel thermos bottle with the camera on the inside covered with ice. It's attached to the surface by a long cable. You can see the white 1-foot markers on
Remind
the
us
cable.
that you're doing a physical exam.
Here we are testing the lights and to take video pictures down the dark
Same
path.
thing.
Here is the little camera itself, out of the housing. It's about 2 inches long and about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, lens and all. We now have the camera down into the
So lower down
bed
into the
of
orifice
faithful.
itself.
It's about 6 feet down, and it's swinging on the end of its cable at the moment. And we will soon be
This is the
on our way
side.
down
This is looking straight down
as
the
deep as
hole.
we can get safely. At this
It's
moment,
just
we're
swinging
still
back and
discussing
forth, so we
exactly
can't
whether
control
all of the hardware
what
is
it's
working
actually
and the
seeing.
camera properly hooked up electrically and the right microphones running and full eruption.
Well, I mean, I know people know this was your cartoon, but I haven't covered it up. This is
Full
stuff
eruption.
making these movies. That's just me, just treated this one.
Here you see that old faithful surface band is a slot-like structure, as I mentioned.
Okay, I'll show you if you want to come up later. Keep Yellowstone wild, guys.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have time for just a few questions.
Anything happened in Yellowstone with the Montana earthquake?
No, what? That's another myth. There was a magnitude 5.8 at Lincoln, Montana, which was 200 miles away.
Get your mic up close to you, please.
There was a magnitude 5.8 a week ago at Lincoln, Montana, south end of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. I know it comes to do my PhD thesis for doing geophysics up there. Anyway, 5.8, few aftershocks, 4, 4.5. Now it's 200 miles from Lincoln, Montana to Yellowstone. And so the hypothesis that was raging in the press is that the Yellowstone swarm, which occurred before, triggered the Montana earthquakes. The answer is no, it did not. Montana earthquakes, just ongoing background seismicity of the intermountain seismic belt.
In your measurements of the heat flow right around the Yellowstone area, which you did in Lake with the probe, the drilling holes, how well known is the heat flow from coming into the Earth in other crustal regions of Earth? Do we know that very well?
Well, that's, I mean, people do make heat flow measurements on land. But they're very difficult. You have to drill a hole.
So my
So we
question
drill,
is,
so you got to pay for it.
so do we know those well enough to know whether or not convection of magma under the earth could be contributing to global temperature?
We know reasonably well, but I can't get into the details. We've got enough heat flow measurements around on land in Yellowstone to know what the background heat flow is compared to that. The lake is easy because those probes, you just dump them into the mud.
Yeah.
You know, they go in 10 seconds. You got a measurement after about an hour. So the answer is we have enough data around Yellowstone to make a comparison of inside the caldera compared to outside the caldera. But not detailed outside.
How does the volume of the upper crustal reservoir rhyolite compare to the amount of stuff that was thrown out when they were...
Oh, well, good question. The actual volume of the rhyolite system is 3,500 cubic kilometers. And it erupted, when they had the super eruptions, it may have erupted, well, I've got the numbers in my book, 2 or 3%. So the eruptive volume is tiny compared to the volume. When those big eruptions occur, you know, I have a picture of them here. Most of the material falls back into the hole. Some of it gets into the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and the ashes go around the world and create volcanic winters. So the Yellowstone Caldera is 50 miles long, 40 miles wide. It exploded, things went up as high as probably 30 to 40,000 feet in the material. Just most of it came back down into its own hole. 3,500 cubic kilometers, just the number we have for our seismic tomography.
Professor, any sense of what we will know in 10 or 20 years?
Of what we will what?
Of what we will know in 10 or 20 years? Any sense?
Well, we're installing, I mean, what we're doing is, we've had these episodes where we've installed more and more instruments. Geophysics is the way to look beneath the surface of the earth. We have an array of seismographs in Yellowstone, 60 seismographs in Yellowstone Teton, and 60 GPS instruments that we operate. What we're doing now with these very dense arrays that I showed you, we're going to see a lot of detail. And what we're doing is we're just starting out on a new project where we're going to the main hydrothermal systems, putting in 150 of these seismographs at a time. So I think in 10 years, we're going to have an image of every hydrothermal feature in Yellowstone to a depth of about 1 kilometer.
One last question.
One more question.
One more.
John?
What creates
Pete?
a hot spot? How deep do you think it goes? And
Hot
what
spot.
is the energy source on that?
And the hotspots, he asked a good question. Hotspots are hotspots on the surface of the earth where you have active volcanic centers. But where does the material come from? I had some images of that. They come from a plume of magma that originates at the core mantle boundary, which is molten at that boundary between the core, outer core, and the lithosphere. And there are shallow ones, which is Yellowstone. It's only 600 kilometers. And we think they come from concentrations of radioactive material, potassium and thorium. That's the hypothesis for the origin of plumes. Now, core mantle plume, I'm sorry, it's the origin for Yellowstone. Core mantle plumes get some magma from the core, 2,700 kilometers down. And it rises at 6 centimeters per year. That's the buoyant, that's the rising rate to get to the surface. So the material is coming from deep in primordial Earth, and there are plumes and hotspots in all the major planets that we know of. Similar histories. And we hypothesized it, right?
So Bob, on behalf of the geologists of Jackson Hole and all of us in the room, we want to thank you for an absolutely excellent presentation.
I love this picture.
So before we do the chairs, if we can all, these chairs, this side, those that one, can we all once again thank